quite a busy week for Guild Wars 2, honestly, which is nice since we just had the Drakkar rework, we've had the announcement of the big balance and so on. Well, there is more going on, and since I had time at the end of the day today, I thought I'd fill you all in. So first, let's talk about one of the biggest pieces of news. Really, there was a whole blog post about it. That's Swiss-style tournaments for PvP, which you guys might not know what that is. Don't worry, they gave us a blog post. I won't linger on this too long since I know most of you don't PvP and it's kind of considered to be a bit of a dead end. But as someone who played a lot of it last year, I'm happy to see this is going somewhere now. This is a bit like the World versus World situation with the Alliance feature. We know the devs are working on it and want it there, but they've been struggling for how long to do it. Finally, there's movement. Check it out. Swiss tournaments have progressed enough that we need your help with the next phases. On the 13th of February, which obviously now has actually passed, we'll be running the first experimental Swiss tournament. While we've made every effort to have a solid system, testing eternally and testing in a live environment with thousands of players are very different. There's a high chance this tournament will experience bugs. This could result in the tournament being cancelled while in progress and tournament rewards not being distributed. Additionally, some new UI will not be finished in time to run the test, blah, blah, blah. So those tests actually have happened. They were really bad, I believe. They were very buggy. There were 2 separate tournaments that were attempted to run. Maybe there was actually another. Was it over 2 separate days? Certainly when I browse in-game at my tournament history, I can see that there were a couple of sets of Dwayner's duos. And indeed, these were not full conquest tournaments they were trying to test Swiss out with. They were just Dwayner's duos, which means you only need 4 people to simulate a match, an entire match, instead of 10 to simulate a full conquest game. Would make sense to use this game type to fill out as many different games and populate a tournament as much as possible. They use the phrase thousands of players there. There are definitely not thousands of players going for Guild Wars 2 tournaments, not even the tests here, which do give you a unique title if you try out, but there you have it. I believe that they managed to identify several bugs. They've got a few messages on the forums about it, and they're going to be running more tests, I believe, next week, and they'll keep going with that until they figured out all of the most critical issues. It really is a beta testing, you know, you're in there to help them figure out the problems. So anyone particularly whiny about the fact that Swiss isn't perfect during the testing phases, I think is a bit of a fool. I'm very happy to see that ArenaNet are making progress. If you don't know what Swiss is, they also have a little bit of a description here on the website. I'll throw an image up for you guys. You can pause the video if you'd like to, but for my purposes on the video, I think I'll stop there. Once they do actually have Swiss in, maybe I'll give you guys a good rundown if it actually does something for PvP. Because God, I'd love it to. That is the best part of Guild Wars 2. I still maintain, or would be if it had had the support and population for all those past years. Moving on, there was a bit of a news about PAX East, which of course is coming on. I love that there's a big gaming convention right at the start of the year. These are such drab, lame, horrible months, and then they have it. At least there's PAX East. ArenaNet are going to be there, and if you remember, I talked about this on a recent video. Well, I was kind of hoping, and didn't they suggest they were going to talk about visions somewhat? That we might get a little bit of early details? Well, the devs have started mentioning it on the forums. They've given a post on the website. It really doesn't look like that at the moment. Maybe we'll have both, but here's what they officially say. I have to admit, this post is a bit of a snooze fest for me. It's just a few weeks away. Come and visit us on the show floor at PAX East 2020 at booth 1307. We'll have a sweet backdrop, props for photos, and a community wall to celebrate friends/ships. As a part of our partnership with Seize the Awkward, if you remember, you could get that free shirt in-game. We're participating in a panel at PAX East called Build Your Guild, Make and Support Friends in Gaming. It's all about games with supportive and uplifting communities. Panelists from ArenaNet, Take This, and the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention will share how players can get to know each other, build friendships, and support each other in-game. Doesn't really sound like my cup of tea too much, though obviously for an honourable and nice cause. To attend the panel, join us on Thursday, blah, blah, blah. That's really all they say. They'll be at the Arachnid Theatre. I've still got my fingers crossed that hopefully we'll get a little something. But, you know, visions might not even be that far away anymore, right? Sometime in March at the latest, we should be doing them. Next, let's talk about some in-game changes. Nothing crazy, but obviously we did have that patch that updated Drakkar. I've already done a video and talked about numerous differences that are going on in the map. Some stuff that I had missed out on when I initially covered it. It's really fun to talk about, and I'm pretty happy with the Drakkar updates, even if the boss fight isn't as close to Triple Trouble as I once upon a time hoped it to be. But I did miss out on some other details, like, for example, the wikis noted, and you probably have seen this as well yourselves if you're playing a lot at the moment, that in your inventory now, you actually can see multiple currencies listed down there. This, I believe, or I was told, there was a dev post a long time ago saying it would be impossible to pull this off But now there it is in the UI, so you can see your gold and your karma and the map currency and the keys, for example, or whatnot. And that's a nice little improvement that hopefully will matter and mean something for some of the more complicated maps, whether those are in the future or some of the more complicated maps we already did. If I look back to, say, Season 3 or Season 4, we were juggling a lot of currencies and stuff then. Now all the relevant stuff should be there. I like that. Another thing as well about Drakkar, I did mention this in the comments of my last video, but I know a lot of you guys don't scroll down and see all the stuff we're talking about there. Well, it's to do with failing the meta event. If you are unsuccessful in defeating Drakkar, which hopefully happens a little bit more regularly now, and has obviously happened to some players, the whole area gets flagged as an open world PvP area. Seriously. And not open world PvP like we're in the Demolition Derby from the Grothmar War Downs and we're all in, you know, Dune buggies and we have the Dune buggy skills. No, it's us with our skills, with our traits in PvE balance that straight up get to attack one another. Everyone's flagged. And what's kind of funny is you're going to have a big zerg of players there that are all kind of balled up in this, you know, low arena type circular room. And you're going to be tempted. You're going to accidentally blow each other up. Just imagine if Guild Wars 2 had like a friendly fire mechanic. It would completely change Zerg positioning. Everybody just expects to be safe standing next to one another. And now all those fire fields you were enjoying or whatever would start hurting you. Then you can actively go for one another. I'm not sure you're flagged open world PvP for that long. And obviously this isn't a dueling feature, which I know a lot of people have wanted to be able to do for a long time. But it's definitely a fun idea. It reminds me a lot, obviously, of Heart of Thorns, where there were a couple of story instances, or maybe specifically only one, where if you're playing a Sylvari character, you would be flagged for a little while as able to fight any co-op allies you're against. And here we have it with a similar kind of dragon story going on right now, which is somewhat unfortunate, but they get to do it on a much bigger scale out in the open world if one of these meta events failed. I don't think there's any hidden achievements or anything really nuts there, but be sure not to give up too quick, because you do at least have something fun to see, even if it looks like you're not going to be able to kill the boss in time. I like that. There were some other updates to Drakkar too that I'm only really just now learning about. The devs had to talk about on the forums a bit. Supposedly, if you beat him, it's not just the new Ascended weapon set I mentioned in the previous video. He also now drops the Winter's Heart Infusion too. And an exotic set, but maybe those weren't unique skins. I'm not entirely sure on that one. But yeah, you actually have a place year-round to get Winter's Heart, and it's from this big chest. That basically gives it an equivalent thing in its loot table to something like the Preserved Queen Bee from the Silver Wastes, or the Chuck Egg Sack from the Gerent, and means that some lottery-minded players will be interested in doing this, you know, for years now, which is really the kind of stuff I want to see Drakkar do. Now, if we can just get the daily system to sort of up the weight on the loot maybe once a month, then you could do really fun things as well about getting mass numbers of players back to maps like this, but we'll see. So, another little thing about an upcoming feature, you kind of have to dig on the forums to find this one, but it was from Fire Attunement, I believe. I'll just read it out verbatim. It's about build templates, which obviously disappointed people in various ways earlier in the year. Check this out. I have another update for you on what we're working on for build and equipment templates. This was posted in a feedback thread about the system. As mentioned in a previous post, one thing we've been working on is a way to give you all greater flexibility when making experimental changes to templates. That's almost ready. And a revert button for changes to templates will be shipping with the February 25th build. This feature will work a bit like a restore point. Clicking on it will return everything back to the way it was when you first loaded up a build. So, to me, this was a problem with the build template system, but only a minor hassle. It actually kind of came back to bite me in the ass just on a stream today when I was really struggling on what I thought was a strong build, and I realized I'd made some tweaks to a long time ago and forgotten about. But essentially in Guild Wars 2, you don't really have build templates. You have build loadouts, and you unlock new loadout tabs. There's not a specific moment where you save a configuration of the loadout and can return to it or whatever. Well, now they're adding a revert button, so you will be able to do that. You'll be able to equip the template, tweak a couple of traits for, you know, whatever specific little raid scenario you're in here. Maybe Gale Song is good at one point, but Aura at the end of an Overload is good at another. You do that one fight, and then you can just hit revert, and your build template, the loadout, will go back to how it initially was, ready for next time you want to swap it on or off. Really nice. I think what you'll find is your habit in gameplay now is to load up a build, tweak it a bit as you're playing through, and then when you decide that you're going to leave the build, you just hit the revert button before you do so, and everything goes back to its kind of vanilla, so to speak, configuration. A nice little thing, and I'm really happy to see the devs weren't just full of BS when they were saying, no, we'll make updates and we're listening to feedback. They are, and they are. And apparently that's coming on the 25th. Lastly, some pretty lame news, really, but I do feel it's worth talking about. If you guys don't follow too closely, you won't realize that the community tends to keep tabs on NCSoft's, ArenaNet's publishers, earning reports. So you can see financially, generally how well Guild Wars 2 is doing. And we, the community, have been doing this for years now, really. Well, the post talking about the Q4 earnings for Guild Wars 2 really wasn't looking very good. The end of 2019 seems to have been the lowest quarter for earnings that Guild Wars 2 has ever had. Like, the lowest. It's actually about 20% down from Q4 2018. And that kind of sucks. You can say that that's because of a population leaving, or you can say that's because of their specific attempts to monetize. Obviously, as many players, we've sort of felt like the gem store has become more aggressive in recent months, particularly since the layoffs. But that hasn't necessarily held the line as far as ArenaNet's bottom line is. So I do have some thoughts on this, specifically about Q4 2019. That go beyond just general Guild Wars 2 problems, which we're all fairly familiar with and we could talk about till we're blue in the face. I think what probably happened here was a combination of, first of all, the Icebrood Saga, which had a fairly disappointing introduction to the world, with less initial viewership than previous expansions had in the first place, and then not necessarily promising anything too expansion-like. And then, after the announcement, as the end of last year closed, Icebrood Saga really hadn't had any time to prove itself as doing anything outside of the normal operations of Living World. Like, what did we had? We had Grothmar, which was pretty much just a full-fledged Living World release and was very, very pleasant to me. I liked it. They called it a prologue, and that set my expectations low, and then it ended up feeling like a full, proper release. And then we had, right in December, as this quarter's, like, well and truly getting through, we had Episode 1 came out, which was, the first half of Bureau Marches, and was, something you could run through very, very quickly. That was really all Icebrood Saga had to do, and it hadn't really came in and announced itself in a big way anyway, so I think that would have turned a lot of people off around about this time of the game in general. That's one part of it, but don't forget, we are not talking here just about population or enthusiasm or any broader notions of general game success. We are only talking about earnings. And so I think the other thing brings me back to build templates. This was right around when build templates came out, and the devs have known the community have been asking for them for years. I suspect that they thought the build templates would go further in terms of how well they monetized them than they did in the end. That kind of triple dip that the devs went with, and the fact that they had to close down Arc when they got them out, and the fact that Arc was actually doing something slightly different and slightly better, soured a lot of veterans. And you gotta understand, the build template system is monetizing veterans. Not really casuals, not really new people too much. It's an attempt to really get some money out of the raiding contingents and the fractal heavy players and those who are seriously dedicated. And those are exactly the players that got most miffed by the introduction of build templates, which I think really hurt their prospects and how well they sold in the end. And then that, of course, would have, dragged down the earnings. So I think it's kind of a combination of those two things. In general, that doesn't necessarily have to happen this quarter. It doesn't necessarily have to happen as we go forward and Icebrood Saga actually gets more time to express itself. And again, we could talk about other general issues with Guild Wars 2. I know that people seem to love talking about all of its problems. Hell, the video I did talking about its problems just a couple of weeks ago will be a perfect example of all the different things we can say and how enthusiastic people are to indulge in that stuff. But in general, for Q4 2019, it's those two facets, I think, that are more important than any others. Interesting to see if ArenaNet can push through these future rocky months until their next big thing comes out, whether that be an expansion finally that so many of us are clamoring for, or another in product, or what. But realistically, I just want them to do well. Not just because I love the game, but also because I want Guild Wars 2 to do well so that they have as much time as possible that their next thing is genuinely good and not rushed because, Q4 2019 did so poorly and the next quarter would do worse and that hits their time time scale or something. So hopefully 2020 will go a bit better for them. I will note, there is a little bit more news. It's not going to appear in this video. There's been an update to the balance preview. A lot of other changes. That's global stuff, that's world versus world stuff, and that's PvP stuff. I'm going to try and get Boots over so I can do another dedicated video on that. Keep an eye out on my channel for that as we go forward. Please remember, I am covering the Elder Scrolls lately. I've been talking about other MMOs as well. Indeed, I just did a video about all the New World lore. If you'd like to see that, there'll be a link on screen in just a couple of seconds. And until next time, guys, hope you enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching.